Hi, I'm Christian with Pavi Firma Outdoors. Today we're going to do a first in a series of how-tos with Porcelain, and I'm going to be using the Alpha Tool VSP 320. The 320 is probably one of my favorite tools. It's one of the absolute most versatile. You can buy the tool as on its own, or you can buy it in a kit form. When you get it in a kit, you're going to get the Profiler V, which is a 3/4 half round. It does a 3/4 inch bull nose on it. It comes with pads that range from 500 up to 3,000 a head that will change out and for those pads. And then you can also do core drilling with it. And I have 2 core drill bits. This is a 3/8 core drill. And then this is I think this might have been this is a 5/16. This is a laser core drill. This is a electroplate core drill. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I actually find that the lasers work better in a higher speed machine like the ECG 900, which is their big saw grinder, electric cut saw grinder, as to where these little electroplates seem to work nicer on this particular machine. So I'll go ahead, stop the recording, get set up, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and set up the VSP 320 with the 3/4 inch bull nose. I do have an apron. It does spray a fair amount of water, and what I'm going to do is move the camera over. I want to talk about the setup real quick. I have a pair of sawhorses on fairly level flat ground. I have a sacrificial piece of porcelain underneath, 2 layers of foam to help reduce vibration, which helps eliminate chatter, the piece is moving all over the place, and I can cut through it when I use the saw and the core drill. But this particular piece of porcelain is it's a discontinued non-stock, so when I go visit people, my customers, I take the non-stocks with me sometimes if I can for demonstration purposes. So one thing I will tell you about using this the VSP 320 with the 3/4 full round, the smoother the top, the better your line is going to be. It takes about 3 minutes per two linear feet. And a little trick that we've learned with this is to flip the tile over, because the bottom is usually more consistent. And that's something that's a little more important when you get into one that has a little more undulation in the surface, like a natural cleft bluestone or Montauk black, Montauk gray, something along those lines, where you do have a little bit of an undulation in the top. So this wheel will sit there and ride over that. And if it's like that, the line is going to be in and out, and you'll understand what I'm talking about when I get there. But for now, we're going to go ahead and do this one. I'm going to put my apron on and reposition the camera. Okay, so a couple things since I have the tool set up here. This disc on top is designed to spin. Now, if this thing is actually spinning, you have your angle off. In order to keep the depth correct, there's an internal steel plate that acts like a bearing, and that will ride along this edge, keeping you from overcutting. However, you can roll your cut like this. So I'm going to hold the tool close to my body and kind of sway with it through my cuts, and it should take me about 3 minutes. Turn the water on first. Okay, so you can see this line on top is very nice and clean. Very nice and straight. I did hit this corner a little bit. Not a big deal. I can buff that out, but it's already chipped, so I don't really care. Okay, now I'm on the other side, and I'm right-handed, so it makes it a little easier. These pads work really well when they got a little bit of water on them. So sometimes I'll just turn that on, get this a little bit wet, shut my water back off, and then take this, move it out just a little bit. All right, that is a very nice edge. That is a very nice, clean, half-round edge. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the demi bowl on one edge for you right now. And it's really easy to swap these heads out. I keep an adjustable crescent with me. And then the wrench that came with the tool. And we're gonna put that in here. Pop this head off. And since I'm only doing one side, it only takes about half the time. So we'll switch the camera up again, and I'll do another edge. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do this edge over here. I'll do this one for you. All right, got the camera repositioned a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a, you know what? I'm gonna flip this. Do a totally different edge so that you can kind of get a see of it in the camera here. So this time I'm just gonna do the demi bowl edge, which has a bearing on the bottom and then the disc on the top. This takes, again, about half as long as the 3/4 did. Go ahead and start my water. Not quite done yet, but one thing I wanted to say is when I get close to this corner, I'm looking down at the center of my machine and lining that up so that I don't really go past it. When I get close, you'll see me kind of fade out and I'm feathering out this corner I'm grinding it, but I'm feathering it out. So we're almost done with this one. Get back at it. All right, I can't ask for much nicer than that. That came out perfect. Of course, this particular tile makes it look easy. Again, I would go ahead and finish this up. Let me spin this around here, like so. I would finish this off with the hand pads. Again, starting with the blue 60 grit. Get a little water on it. Got a little water on my 150. Now, one last little thing when you do this, I would recommend that you take the 60 grit pad and just touch the bottom edge. It puts just a slight chamfer and removes that sharp edge. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so for this segment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a notch out, a 3-sided cut, and we're going to be using the VSP 320. We're also going to use a saw. I have a grinder for my own purpose, but the grinder is going to use a Katana blade as well as my saw. But let's say that I have to go around a 4x4 post. Well, a 4x4 post is going to measure 3 5/8 by 3 5/8. But I want to leave a little more room. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a 4-inch notch out. Now, pencil will not stay on this, and Alpha has a product called G-tape that I just happen to be out of at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and mark off 4 inches, and we're going to do a 4x4 notch out. Now, pencil will not stay on the porcelain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some really light cuts with this grinder, just nicking the surface so that I can see it when it's wet. That's it. That's all I needed to do with the grinder. And what that has done is it's created a little nick in the corner, and that will also help me with my core drill. When I get to the corner, it'll help keep it from jumping out. So I will switch over to that and be right back. Okay, so I'm going to put on the adapter. And with this one, you can have it set up. Got a little leak there. You can have this set up and then drop this piece down in. There's a little keyway cut out. You take the little supplied Allen wrench and catch the keyway. Tighten that up. That'll be good to go. And okay, this one I'm going to leave the camera right where it is, but I want you to watch what I'm doing. I'm going to take this, I'm going to lay it in here at an angle, right into my corner. I'm using the electroplated bit, again, as I said before, and then what I'm going to do is as I get going, I'm going to wobble. Once it catches, I'm going to start wobbling this. And once I get a good cut and I'm into the bisque into the meat of the tile, I can then minimize how I'm wobbling and work my way down through it. And I'm going to do this twice. Help if I plug it in. All right, now I've got power. Okay, that's one hole done, and that looks really good. I'll show you as soon as I get this other one done. Okay, so that did not take long at all. Let me show you this. 2 perfect holes right in the corner. And now I'm going to set up and we will cut this out. Okay, so for this part of the segment, we have stopped the VSP 320 and the profiling and whatnot, and I'm moving on to the ESC 150. This is absolutely one of my favorite saws. There's a 125 and an ESC 125, ESC 150. The ESC 150, I can bevel with this. I can cut miters. It's also a 6-inch blade versus a 5-inch blade, so you get a little better life out of it. Wet or dry, so right now I've got water hooked up, or the small nozzle of a shop vac will fit into this perfectly. Even though a shop vac does not do the best of jobs, I'd recommend getting something more with a HEPA filter and set up for the heavier dust. The Katana blade is a wet or dry, and I really prefer using it wet. Again, it cuts down on the dust. I don't have to wear a respirator, but it eats the porcelain, eats it pretty well. Now, you're going to see me do a couple different things on this when I do this cut. My first cut is going to be a plunge. I'm going to plunge down in, and with this saw, I'm going to have it set up so that the blade depth is essentially the tooth segment of the blade that far past the thickness of the porcelain. That way I don't have too much and I don't have too little. So I'm going to do this in one go. I'm going to cut between these 2 holes that I just cut or drilled, and I'm going to plunge the blade down in. Having that little nick in here also allows the blade to just kind of, it'll want to jump into that slot and then follow it straight down. Now, I want to be careful that I don't go past the edges of my holes. I just want to go through the middle. And it's okay if I don't go all the way through, especially as tight as these are together. I'm going to flip this over and we'll finish the cuts like that. So first off, let's start with a plunge cut. I'm going to start on the nose of the saw, and I'm going to roll it backwards down into the cut. Okay, now these 2 cuts, I have tried to do a plunge cut for these 2 legs, and it doesn't seem to work very well. It keeps blowing out the bottom edge of the tile. Not that it really matters, but it's something that bothers me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to come in from the edge. One pass, I'm going to come in and get as close to the edge of my hole again as I did before. So let's give that a try. Very good. Now I'm going to flip this over and we are going to connect the dots from the back side. Now, as you can see, I've got a nice three-sided cut right here, punched out what was left over. I can now take my small grinder and clean up these inside edges. All right. 1/2. Flip it over. Clean up the bottom edge. Flip it back over. And move this up here so that you can see it better. Now, one last little finishing touch before I bring you in is I am going to take this and I'm going to buzz this around. The inside edges of this. All right, let me bring you over and show you what that looks like. This is a nice, clean cut. The holes in the corners, I drilled those out. That relieved the tension and gave, if this did want to crack, it gave it somewhere to crack to with termination. And I've got just a perfect slot. Now, if this little bit of junk that's down in here, if I wanted to grind that out, I could grind that out a little bit better. But for all intent and purposes, it doesn't matter. Okay. So now with the ESC 150 with a Katana blade, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a cross cut. And I'm going to cut this off as close as I can to this, just to show you how strong porcelain is and how precise and clean these tools actually do work. You'll notice that I have a fence. This is the first time I'm using this. I just went to Lowe's and bought this for about $40. I like cutting with a straight edge, and I usually have a piece of plywood that I use when I use the bigger saw, and I just clamp that down. But for this demonstration, I really wanted to try this straight edge and see how it goes. Now, porcelain is under a lot of tension. So sometimes, typically on the light colors, you'll notice this. As you're getting through, when you get to, your blade gets to about here, you'll notice that the kerf, the gap where the blade, blade has removed the kerf, will actually start closing up on you. If you're not careful and you're not paying attention to the sound of the saw, the feel of the saw, you will blow that out. It will snap, and I figured out a few ways to get around it. I don't believe this particular paver is going to snap. This particular color cuts pretty easy. It's usually the white ones that give me fits, but I don't think we're going to do that. But I'm going to pretend that that my gap is going to close behind me, and I'll show you what I'll do. When I get to that point and I first notice that the gap is closing, I will keep the saw running. I will raise it up. I will lower it back in, at which point you will hear it start to cut on its way down. So I'm removing from the tail, the scrap piece, I'm removing a little bit of material. Then I'm going to back the saw up in my cut, giving a little more relief, and then I'm going to start going again. And when I get to about 7/8 of the way through the paver, I will really slow down my pace at cutting, because I usually go at a pretty good clip. I will slow way down and just run it until I get through. And a lot of times it'll still pop, but it'll pop right at the very end, and usually on the underside and the bottom of the tile. That pretty much saving a $40 mistake. So I'll go ahead and get going on this. Okay, so I'm gonna cut some of the way, and then I'm gonna flip the camera so that you can see me cutting towards the lens. We'll go ahead and get this going. Did I unplug it? I did. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start my cut. Just like I said before, I think what I may do is when I get to the point that it might be an issue, I may move it over here so that you can kind of see directly into what I'm actually doing. So again, just like I said, I'm going to pretend from this point that my kerf is closing up. It looks like it might be the slightest bit, but not enough to make a difference. So right now, with the saw off, I'm going to back it up just a touch in the cut. I'm going to raise it up and then lower it back down, and we'll keep it rolling. Okay, didn't remember to reposition. It did absolutely pop at the very, very end. As you can see, hopefully you can see that right there. It did pop, but not enough that it hurt anything. So essentially we just saved a potential $40 mistake, because that would have been my scrap. This is my good piece. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and knock that little bit off. Okay, so before I do anything else, I'm going to reposition and I want to show you this edge. Notice how clean that edge is, and there is next to zero chipping, next to nothing the whole way through. So let's reposition again and I'll talk about it. The reason that tiles chip is, well, one, you're using the wrong tool, the wrong blade, and the wrong technique. Those are the main reasons. Typically what it is the segmentation of the blade is smacking that edge. Rather than cutting through it, rather than abrading through it, it's smacking that edge. That happens a lot when you're freehand cutting, or if you're not cutting with a fence. Again, this was $40. It runs out to, it's supposed to be 4 foot, and it will run out to 50¼ inches. So a 24 by 48, not an issue with it. Not an issue with this this fence. Because I don't hardly have any chipping, all I want to do is just put a little bit of back bevel on it. And to do that, I'm just going to take this pad, get a little water from the surface. I have this foam. I'm going to set it at an angle. A little bit more. Flip this pad. There we go. And that is as close to a factory edge as you can get. Here, I'll show you. There we go. That is crisp and clean. Folks, thanks for watching Pavi Firma Outdoors. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on these two tools. The next one in the series, I'll be using the ECG 900 and doing some long rip cuts as well as some curve cuts. Now, I can also do curves with this and a curved blade, but for now, this is where we'll stop the video, and I really appreciate you watching. Thank you.